Well, a warm welcome along then to Mark Langdon's Bets Club with myself, Warren Ashurst, and Mark Langdon to take you through the final weekend of the Premier League season. Amongst other things, we'll also have, of course, a look ahead to the finals at the end of the campaign in Europe and also the FA Cup final, that second consecutive Manchester derby. And Dan Childs will be with us a little bit later on for an EFL focus as the playoffs get to their crucial end of season stage. Of course, don't forget, we're, as ever, brought to you in association with freesupertips.com. That's your home for daily football hackers and bet builders. And Mark, we can't start anywhere else, really, than with the two big games of the week, as the title focus is well and truly on now, as Manchester City and West Ham come together at the Etihad, whilst Arsenal and Everton face off at the Emirates. It promises to be a thrilling final day. Let's start off with the clash then between City and West Ham. The hosts looking for a fourth consecutive title, 1-12, around about that mark to pick up the 3 points. The draw, West Ham as big as 20-1 to collect the 3 points. I suppose the big question is, Mark, can City be overhauled by an unpredictable West Ham team?
I think the biggest question is, Warren, have we had the same decorators in? Is it, for those that are watching on YouTube and they can see it's got the same sort of wallpaper or paint, whatever it is. We're just in separate studios in the same Leeds office. So I don't want anyone to think that we've been copying each other and we're sitting in our bedrooms. But I suppose in answer to your question, can anyone, can West Ham stop Manchester City? I mean, the short answer is no. I can't see it. I think that City will go on. They're around about 1-9 to win the Premier League, and I think that they will do that for the fourth time in a row. But there might be some sort of nervy moments along the way, because even when City have sort of managed to land the titles in the past, not always been done with ease. The Aguero goal, the most famous of the lot. They were 40 on the Betfair exchange heading into injury time on that occasion before Dzeko sort of scored the equalising goal and Aguero got his iconic sort of strike. And then even against Aston Villa a couple of years ago, they found themselves in a terrible position. Only went out to 13-10 on that occasion, though, because Liverpool weren't doing their part of the bargain at the time, and eventually Gundogan got his goals and City became champions again. And I think that West Ham might be able to make it awkward. That you might get Pep Guardiola kind of scratching his head and sort of looking pensive as he usually does. He might not go full sort of on Tuesday when he was on the floor rolling around when he thought that Son was going to equalise very late on. So I think City will win. But there might be the odd moment where Arsenal fans sort of that their hearts flutter and that they start to dream.
I hope Pep Guardiola's not wearing that heavy woolen jumper again. He must have lost about half a stone in the last week. He wore that against Fulham and against Tottenham, and it's not necessarily been that cool over the last few weeks. And I imagine on a really stressful afternoon on Sunday, that'll be the last thing he needs.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I was sort of out in a beer garden watching that, a beer garden in Spurs before the Tottenham Burnley game, watching Fulham against City, and it was absolutely baking. I couldn't believe that he's a tire. It was definitely t-shirt and shorts weather. He's. I wonder if he's a bit superstitious and he's sort of wearing it now just because he feels like he needs to. But I don't think he needs to worry about being superstitious, because look at the talent in that team, and that's the thing with City, is that they don't need kind of one player, one specific player to turn up, because if Haaland doesn't, then Foden will chip in with a goal. If De Bruyne doesn't produce the moment of magic, then Bernardo Silva will sort of pick out the pass. If none of that works, they'll chuck on Doku. You've got Grealish potentially waiting there. You've got the fullbacks that can cause problems.
I was going to say, Guardiola pops up with 2 goals against Fulham.
Exactly. They're strong on set pieces in terms of attacking them. So, and even when Ederson's injured, Ortega, comes up with big saves. That Son moment wasn't the only one on Tuesday when City looked like they might be vulnerable. There was a save almost with his backside against Kulusevski that sort of hit the inside of his thigh. It looked for all the world that was going to sneak in. as well. So that's the thing with City. I think in terms of like looking for an upset, and if Arsenal wanted to, kind of dream and think, well, what could West Ham do? If it was another team, say, oh, well, all you got to do is stop Haaland, but it's not. They've got so many weapons, so many different ways they can hurt you. And I didn't think they were very good at all on Tuesday. And actually, despite all the noise or lack of noise, I suppose, inside the stadium around the game at Tottenham, Spurs played very well in the match and still lost 2-0.
I suppose you mentioned there what I would class as the negatives for Arsenal, and considering how good City are. You probably, like me, Mark, have had about 4 or 5 people at least come up to you this week and say, is there any hope? What can we expect in terms of the final day of the season? If we were looking at potential problems for City and pluses for Arsenal going into this, I mean, I would say, firstly, at least it's not Sheffield United or Luton or a Burnley who are playing and already been relegated. But also as well that West Ham do have, 3 or 4 players of real ability who can cause problems.
Yeah, I mean, that is it, isn't it? It's that Bowen, Paquetá, Kudos. They're the 3, really, that you go, right, any one of them could produce a moment that gets a goal. They are also very good on set pieces. Maybe a free kick. Ward-Prowse hasn't actually kind of delivered too many sort of free kick goals since he moved to West Ham, but maybe something like that works for them. And so you have got that. I mean, but this is also a West Ham team that recently got absolutely smashed by Crystal Palace away and also by Chelsea. So defensively, we kind of imagine a David Moyes team being really hard to beat and very strong and robust in those defensive areas. Hasn't been the same since actually, I suppose, they lost Declan Rice to Arsenal. I think he covered so much ground and did so much work for them in front of the defence. And even when they got that point against Liverpool, recently at home, it comes about despite them conceding a couple of goals. And I just don't see this kind of Moyes kind of backs to the wall effort working. And also, there's nothing riding on the game for West Ham. And I think it's a lot easier to kind of persuade players to play in that defensive manner when you can see an end goal, i.e. it's a Europa League game and you trying desperately to get them back to the London Stadium. When it's the final day of the season, I know the sun's shining in a lot of places. I haven't actually looked at the forecast for Manchester, but
never shines there.
No, attitudes tend to be more on the kind of, I suppose, free rolling it slightly. I'm not saying they'll be on the beach, but it's just, do the players want to run and work and be joined up defensively for 90 minutes, well, plus probably another 10 of injury time these days? It's just harder to do that, I think, on the final day. And there's no surprise. I mean, if you have a look down historically, the final day produces a lot of goals. And I think that's one of the reasons why, because there's just less riding on it from that factor for a lot of teams.
One link will be that, of course, Mikel Arteta was an Everton player during David Moyes' time in charge at Goodison Park. I'm sure he'll have been on the phone to Moyes this week asking for a favour. Arsenal 2-11 to beat Arteta's former team, Everton, on the final day of the season. Everton are as big as 12-1 to win the game, and the draw 7-1. Obviously, the Gunners have just got to concentrate on the job in hand for them, Mark, first and foremost. Are they going to be getting the win?
I think so, yeah. Around about 9-1, I think is best I've seen for them to win the Premier League, which is as big as they've been for absolutely ages, which will be frustrating, seeing as that they've taken it down to the final day. But realistically, it's going to be very difficult for them. And you make a good point there, Warren. I think it's vitally important that Arsenal do their bit, get in front early, and put the pressure on City, because what they don't want to happen is, to go 1-0 down, and that's just going to make life really easy for City. And I don't think that Arsenal will sort of, not fold, that's probably the wrong word now, but I don't see it as this being a bottle job from Arsenal. Last season, I didn't think it was that either, but I can understand why some people sort of did go down that route. This time, they haven't done that much wrong. Like, you are going to drop points at some stage. That's just the sort of normalities of football. And they lost a game to Aston Villa that in the second half got away from them, but in the first half there were chances for them to take the lead. They didn't get them. If they would have, then maybe they would have gone on, to have won that game. I can see the point that some are making, that Arsenal should have pushed harder at the Etihad when it was 0-0, and they that would have been a real decisive moment in the title race. But there was a long way out, and I think virtually every team takes a point at City with. Unless it's the last day, last couple of games of the season. I mean, you are happy to get out of there with a draw, and it nearly worked. They missed a chance, didn't they? Late on, was it Martinelli sort of broke through? Certainly, somebody down that left-hand side, and a better ball across the middle, and it might have been the ultimate kind of killer blow. If they don't win it, I don't think there needs to be kind of a roots and branch investigation or any kind of what do we need to do better. I think this is kind of who Arsenal are. They're a team that's capable of getting mid to high 80 points, might be able to get to around about 90. But City are just so relentless when they get into this position that you need Haaland, you need De Bruyne, you need Bernardo Silva, you need Pep Guardiola. Like, there's only so many of them to go around. So I don't think Arsenal, if they do fall short, should sort of beat themselves up in any way. I was more disappointed with their Champions League efforts, really. I thought they were very negative in the game away to Porto, and they eventually won on penalties. And then against Bayern Munich, sort of didn't put in their best performance. So I'd say there's maybe work to do in terms of Europe. But in the Premier League, I think they've had a really good run. I don't mean that to be patronising in any way. I think they've played to their levels, and if they fall short, it's just because City are better than them.
I mean, it can always be if, buts, and maybes. But if you're taking Manchester City to the final day of the season, then you've clearly done a lot right if that's the case. Yeah. Just looking at Everton, Mark, I mean, you said there, understandably, you can't see West Ham attempting to shut up shop or keep it tight. That's one thing that Everton probably can do.
Yeah, I mean, you're not asking Everton to do anything that they don't do in sort of any other day of the week, really. No, I think that actually they will sort of make it difficult, I suppose, for Arsenal in that regard. And I don't suddenly see sort of Sean Dyche turning into Kevin Keegan, playing five up front and just having a laugh on the final day. I think he'll quite fancy sort of trying to spoil it for Arsenal. I think the difference is the Everton players have kind of bought into what Dyche wants, and presumably he's going to be there next season. See no reason why they're going to change manager. We know that Moyes is off. We know what's the threat? What can he kind of say to them that's going to make them run through those brick walls? Whereas I think Everton will sort of put in an Everton type performance, and away from home though that hasn't really worked, has it, against the big teams? At Goodison, it is different, but I would expect Arsenal to win.
So we're going to have a look at Mark's best bets now for both games. Let's start at the Etihad then, Mark. What are you suggesting here?
I'm going to go for Man City to win and both teams to score. We know it was very nervy against Aston Villa and QPR when City got the job done on the final day previously. And West Ham have scored in all of their away games to the top half, apart from Manchester United and Chelsea. And while they were absolutely blown away at Stamford Bridge, they hit the woodwork multiple occasions as well. I mean, Jared Bowen just sort of had a connection with the bar, I think it was on that occasion. But so West Ham to score, Man City to win. And then for the Arsenal v Everton game, I found this one more difficult. I just went for Trossard to score first. He has scored in 6 of his last 9 appearances for the Gunners, and they haven't got that natural goal scorer, have they, really? So they are shared around between sort of the front 4 or 5. And Trossard, I mean, I think you could argue he's sort of the biggest killer in terms of that Arsenal penalty box. He's very ruthless in front of goal. So maybe he'll be the one to get Arsenal on their way. But no teams in the Premier League era has ever managed to kind of overturn the lead on the final day, and I think that will still be standing come the final whistle about 6 o'clock on Sunday.
So Mark expecting a fourth consecutive title for Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. There's still some bits and pieces to play for in terms of below the top two in the table, and it's time now to look ahead to the other 8 games of the Premier League final day. Okay, well, we're going to start off by looking ahead to the battle for the European places and a top 6 finish in the Premier League. And in their hands, Chelsea have it going into the final game after another good win in midweek against Brighton. They play host to Bournemouth. Chelsea around about 9-20 to collect the 3 points. The draw 7-2. Bournemouth around 6-1. Are Chelsea going to get the job done here, Mark?
I think so. Probably just worth explaining, Warren's kind of how the picture is. I mean, it shows there isn't actually that much to play for when we're talking about the race for the Europa League and the Europa Conference League, but that's where we are. So as it stands currently, Chelsea are in, Tottenham are in pole position because, that they only need, a point against Sheffield United to guaranteed fifth. But we're going to assume that Tottenham are going to take a kind of European spot because they need an awful lot to go wrong for them not to get it. Realistically, sort of Chelsea are in position to take what at the moment is the final sort of league place, and which would be the Europa Conference League as it stands. But it's likely to be the Europa League, because if Man City were to win the FA Cup, then the team that finishes in 6th spot would guarantee themselves Europa League. If City do win the FA Cup, then that opens up 7th for the Europa Conference League, which is currently a position being held by Newcastle, and they just need to match the result that Manchester United get away at Brighton. Of course, things could become different if Manchester United were to win the FA Cup. Then the team that finishes in 6th spot, which is Chelsea at the moment, would drop down into the Europa Conference League. And I think there is a big difference between the Europa League and the Europa Conference League. And I don't want to do a disservice to West Ham fans who were very happy, and rightly so, about their European trophy success last season. But if you look at the kind of quality in the Europa League, it is of a higher standard to the Conference League. And also, if you win the Europa League, then you're in the Champions League for the following season. So we'll start off with that Chelsea game, as you say. A point does them in terms of sort of qualifying for some kind of European competition. But I actually think that they're not overly bothered, really. There's not going to be much tension for Chelsea, a team that, as their fans say, have won it all. So I don't see them sort of panicking over sort of trying to secure a 6th spot. I think they'll do sort of finish the season in style, going for Chelsea to win and over 2.5 goals. They're flying at the moment. They don't want the season to end. And Bournemouth, I think, will be kind of nice final day cannon fodder for them at Stamford Bridge. But they might get a goal themselves. They play in a very expressive manner. So I'll go for Chelsea to win and over 2.5 goals.
Can I just say a big thanks to Mark as well, whilst we're on, for explaining that, because I'm not sure I'd have done the job of explaining it as clearly as you did there, Mark. There are a lot of vagaries in terms of who's going to be in what competition next season. We mentioned there Chelsea are in the box seat to finish in the top 6. Newcastle will be frustrated, I think, Mark, with how they played at Old Trafford on Wednesday night, because there was an opportunity there for them against a Manchester United team who have been all over the place of late. They go to Brentford on the final day with a home team around about 2-1 to pick up the 3 points. The draw 13-5 and Newcastle 5-4. Brentford's home record pretty decent of late as well. They've only lost 1 of the last 8 at home. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I'm going to go for a draw in this game. As you say, Brentford have done quite well. I nearly called it Griffin Park. I'm going to have to learn that. But Brentford have done very well at home for as you mentioned, in recent weeks. I think they can make life awkward for Newcastle, but a draw might not be a bad result for Newcastle, because if they do get the draw, because of their goal difference advantage over Manchester United, that's going to mean Manchester United will need to win at Brighton, and I think that might prove sort of beyond Manchester United. So Eddie Howe's team might feel like a draw is an okay result for them, and then they'll just almost hope for the best, really, in terms of the City winning the FA Cup, and they are strong favourites, and we'll preview that later on.
I know there's been a lot of criticism, and we've been critical of Eric Ten Hag as well. I have to say, I actually take my hat off to him. I thought it was very brave to take the microphone after that win over Newcastle on Wednesday and speak to the Old Trafford crowd in the way that he did. He could have quite easily just gone round, applauded, and walked off, but he actually had a few words on the microphone to the fans. And, well, it'll hopefully, for him, he'll be hoping that they get a reaction at the Amex Stadium on Sunday. And then, of course, the FA Cup final. Brighton are the hosts then. They're 11-10 to claim the victory. The draw 3-1. Manchester United around 21-10. You've already alluded to it, Mark, that you think this might be a tall order for United to finish with a win.
I do. Well, in terms of a bet, I'm going to go for under 3.5 goals. Odds against are around about 11-10. But this idea that Brighton are kind of, their games are crazy under De Zerbi just doesn't ring true in terms of more recently. 11 of their last 12 Premier League games have been under 3.5 goals. Now, I know that United are, just the most chaotic team in the Premier League, but Martinez coming back off the bench was a big old boost, I think, for Eric Ten Hag in terms of his defence, and actually saw at least signs of a pattern of play. I'll whisper it quietly against Newcastle, but it wasn't quite as bad as some of their other performances. But we've seen before with United, they got no consistency in their play or their results. So I couldn't trust them to get the win. And so, I just thought the unders might be the way to go, but it's a very nervous sort of bet. I don't really fancy anything in the game.
Well, the game at Turf Moor threatened to be an absolute humdinger a couple of weeks ago. Burnley against Nottingham Forest. It could have been a battle to survive in the Premier League. As it is, Burnley kind of fallen flat over the last couple of weeks. Forest now, barring an absolute catastrophe at Turf Moor, would be sure, of course, of their place in the top flight. Burnley 19-10, I should say, to claim the victory. The draw around 5-2, and Nottingham Forest 27-20. Feels like a big letdown, this game now, Mark.
It does. I was hoping it was going to be like a relegation playoff type game. Hasn't developed into that, and as you say, I mean, like goal difference wise, no point even going into it. Nottingham Forest are safe, and Luton will be relegated alongside Burnley and Sheffield United. I always think on the final day, like throw a few darts at some big prices, because like it is a funny old sort of set of circumstances. Usually the fans are more relaxed, the players are more relaxed, there are more goals. I was just looking at the 2-2 correct score as a way to go. 17 draws these two teams have had between them this season, so they do fancy sharing the spoils, and that sort of plays into the fact it might be a more entertaining game. I watched Burnley at Spurs on Saturday. The one thing I would say, I thought Sander Berg was one of the best players. I mean, De Bruyne and Haaland were there on Tuesday. In terms of, relatively speaking, in terms of sort of bottom half, who might be able to improve a lot of Premier League teams, I thought Sander Berg was one of the better players I've seen at Spurs this season. Really looked a class act for them, and he surprised me. I didn't know he was as good as that. I don't know if that was just a one-off or if he is of a standard that should be playing Premier League next season, whether Burnley... I think he probably needs to leave Burnley, I would say. If not, he'd be amazing in the Championship.
Yeah, certainly. Sheffield United could have done with him and not selling him to one of their rivals ahead of the new season. Selhurst Park is the venue for Crystal Palace against Aston Villa. A lot has been said about Villa, of course, and securing Champions League football for next season. I have to say, I watched Palace against Wolves last weekend, and I was mightily impressed with the Eagles. I have to say, I know they're in a good run of form at the moment, but just when you look at the base and the solidity through the spine of the team, how good they look. I know I said to you, I think earlier this week, Mark, that I could really see them battling for, if not top 6, certainly top 8 next season, if they were to keep all of that squad together. It's a big if, of course, and there's speculation about Oliver Glasner and Bayern Munich doing the rounds at the moment, but Palace will want to finish on a high. They're 5-6 to beat Villa at Selhurst Park. The draw is 100-30 and Villa around 13-5. How do you see this one going, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Palace are playing well. Elise and Eze are doing the business, and others have also stepped up, Wharton being one of them. I mean, I just think that the price is a bit daft here on Crystal Palace. I mean, Aston Villa are a team that will be playing in the Champions League next season. They finished 4th. They've won, a lot of games, beaten a lot of top teams. We mentioned it earlier, didn't they? Winning at the Emirates, they reached the semi-final of the Europa Conference League as well. I know they've probably been on the Raz for a few days celebrating what is a brilliant achievement for them to reach the Champions League, and there was like a sort of dinner, wasn't there, on Tuesday, and Unai Emery looked like he was sort of leading the party at Villa, certainly more than Ollie Watkins. There's pictures of Ollie Watkins, he's a boiled Arsenal fan that maybe didn't enjoy the result quite as much as all of his teammates, and he would have just preferred for Villa to have done the job. I appreciate that Palace are finishing well, and I understand that Villa's focus won't necessarily be on this game because there isn't as much riding on it. But at the prices, I'm just going to take a chance that Villa are going to play to their standard, and if they do, then the price seems a bit daft to me.
Yeah, as good as Palace were last week, I was surprised to see them odds on, I'll be honest, at home to Villa. They will want to finish the season on a high, though, as I say. 3 more games to look at then on the final day of the Premier League season, including Jurgen Klopp's farewell to Liverpool as they play host to Wolves again on the final day of the season. These two seem to play the final day every season. I'm not sure how the fixture calculator works, but Liverpool are around about 1-6 to claim the victory. The draw 7-1. Wolves are massive 14-1. These fond farewells don't always go to plan, Mark. Is this one going to go to plan?
I'm going to go for an upset. I'm going to go for Wolves at 14-1. I mean, look, I know that the fans are going to be up for it. I know the players are going to be up for it. But do you remember when Steven Gerrard's farewell at Anfield? It was pretty much the same, wasn't it, Warren? And it turned into almost a testimonial rather than a game to be won. And Crystal Palace went to Anfield and won. And then I was looking at Sir Alex Ferguson and his final couple of games as Manchester United manager. The last one was a nutty 5-5 draw at West Brom. When would United have drawn 5-5 at the Hawthorns at any other time? And even his last home game, which was kind of where they did all the big send-off for him, they beat Swansea 2-1. And Rio Ferdinand scored the winning goal. It was like 87 minutes or something like that. So I think these games just end up the game doesn't matter. And do you want to be back in a team at 6 on when the result doesn't matter? Absolutely not. Like Wolves haven't got anything to play for, but I think the team talk from Gary O'Neill's quite easy, isn't it? Let's go and spoil it for them. Let's go and ruin the Jurgen Klopp's big farewell. And at 14-1, it's a price that interests me.
It's a huge price. It is a huge price, and I imagine that Gary O'Neill will live off that for the rest of his managerial career.
Exactly. And I think Gary O'Neill, I think he's almost playing for a move away from Wolves. If you listen to the way he's speaking about how difficult it's going to be next season, he's very good at promoting himself. He went on Monday Night Football, didn't he, and did this whole dossier on how, I can't remember which team it was, but how he beat them. And he sort of felt to me like he was sort of saying, any clubs need a good tactician. Beating Liverpool at Anfield would just be another tick in the Gary O'Neill box.
Yeah, it will be a huge addition to his CV, that's for sure. Luton against Fulham is the penultimate game to look at Kenilworth Road. Saw reports this week that Luton might be moving to a new stadium in future, which will be, I suppose for most people, will be a bit of a disappointment to see Kenilworth Road go. But I think as the club progresses, they're probably going to have to move to a new stadium at some point. They look like being in their final Premier League game. They are 17-10 to claim the victory. The draw 29-10. Fulham around 27-20. You said in recent weeks, Mark, that Fulham are possibly the hardest team to predict. What are you thinking about this game?
I'm going to go for a Luton win. They've obviously not been on a good run lately, and when teams are relegated, you do wonder about their motivation. But I actually think that Kenilworth Road will be buzzing for the game. I think that they'll want to sort of celebrate what they've done, and in sort of inverted commas, even reaching the Premier League was a minor miracle. And I think they want to enjoy their final game. Fulham have seemed to me to be the team that has been on the beach sort of slightly ahead of time, and even away from home when they weren't. I mean, they drew 3-3 at Sheffield United. They lost 3-1 at Forest. They sort of, their concentration isn't always on these games away from home. So I'll go for a Luton win. And
last but not least, Bramall Lane is the venue for Sheffield United against Tottenham. We could be here all day talking about Big Angie's comments in midweek, Mark, so we'll probably, we might slightly touch upon it, but we won't take too long. Sheffield United around about 6-1 to win the game. The draw 5-1. Tottenham are 3-1 on. Will there be, the one thing I will say about the comments is, will there be some sort of reaction from the fans, do we think, at Bramall Lane?
I think that there'll probably be less songs sung about Postecoglou than maybe there have been at other games this season. I don't think we're at that point where, when Conte torched the club and sort of couldn't manage them again. Yeah. I think that the summer's probably coming at the right time for people to forget about it ahead of next season. Hopefully they'll be able to kind of patch it all up, because for the vast majority of the season, Spurs fans have enjoyed Postecoglou. I think he's enjoyed managing the club as well. Barring an unusual set of results, like they are going to finish in the Europa League positions. They need, I think it's three results to go against them, including them losing to Sheffield United and Man United beating Man City in the FA Cup final. So, I mean, that's a big old price, that double. So I would expect them, I don't think it's going to have any impact on this result, let's put it that way, nor sort of Postecoglou's sort of shortish term future at Spurs. I think it will be used against him if things start badly next season. So he's maybe burned some bridges there. But in terms of this game, like you can't ask for much easier, can you? I mean, you would like to have been at home to Sheffield United rather than away, but Sheffield United have been poor for the whole season, and Chris Wilder coming in hasn't improved things very much. I'm going to go for Tottenham to win by 3-1, which is around about 10-1. Spurs have only had one clean sheet in the league since Christmas, so they do concede goals even against poor teams. And Sheffield United are the worst for some time, I think, to be in the Premier League. Tottenham went out to Sheffield United in the FA Cup last season, so they shouldn't take the trip to Bramall Lane for granted. That was when they were a Championship team, but I don't think they need to overly worry here about missing out on the Europa League.
So that's Mark's thoughts then on the Premier League final weekend. He'll be back very shortly to go through the finals in terms of the Champions League, Europa Conference League and FA Cup, and his nap of the weekend as well. But we're going to turn our attentions now to the EFL, and Dan Charles can give us his latest tips. Well, as promised, we've been joined again now by Dan Charles to have a look ahead to the EFL action over the next few days. We'll get to the League One and League Two playoff finals in a moment, Dan, but of course the Championship is still at the semi-final stage with the second legs to come, starting with Thursday night's clash at Ellen Road, where Leeds take on Norwich. Goalless after the first leg. It was not a typical playoff first leg, Dan, I have to say. There was times when I was nearly falling asleep watching the action. I imagine it's going to be, one, a bit more lively, and secondly, a bit more entertaining at Ellen Road.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so. I mean, like you say, Warren, that was I was quite looking forward to the Championship playoffs, but that was hard work watching the game on Sunday. I think Leeds, they kind of went into that game, didn't they? They had a bit of a bad run towards the end of the season. Yeah. Farker went in with an extra midfielder that played an extra man in midfield. Norwich didn't seem to have much of a clue about how to break them down. And Leeds actually, I thought, sort of took control of the game. And if anyone looked like was going to win the game and perhaps deserved to win, it was Leeds. Going into the tie, I actually thought Norwich, I said so at the time, were a little bit overpriced. I'm thinking I might change my mind now. The way that they kind of wasted that home advantage at the weekend. Sargent looked like he was carrying an injury when he went off towards the end. He's a massive player for them. Keep an eye on whether he's going to recover from that, Josh Sargent, because Norwich's improvements in the second half of the season has come when he came back from an injury. He got a lot of their goals, his movement as well, especially on the break. They're going to probably sit back at Leeds, play on the counter attack. His pace and movement will be absolutely crucial. So he's going to need to be fully fit and firing. Leeds, you've got to think they're going to be more proactive in the second leg. I didn't think they played badly in the first leg, but as I say, they need to kind of stop the rot after that poor run. They'll, possibly Farker could go with an extra attacker, maybe play Peru, from the start through the middle. I just think they've got weapons, haven't they? If they play at a tempo, so Somerville, I think, is one of the best attackers in the division. Got Ruter as one of the best assisters in the division. They've just got a very strong side, and the atmosphere at Ellen Road, would explain why they got such a good home record. I think it's going to come into play as well. I think looking at a way to get with Leeds, I'll probably go Leeds and over 2.5 goals, despite that kind of boring first leg. I do think there'll be goals in this second leg. Norwich is the away side. You're looking to go there and try and resist and keep things tight. I look at their defence record, especially away from home. They conceded 42 away goals in the Championship. Only Rotherham have conceded more. That is a big worry when you're going into a tough playoff second leg away to Leeds. So I feel that Leeds may break their resistance quite early. That in turn could open the game up and make it high scoring. But Leeds, I think, will do the most damage. So Leeds to win and over 2.5 goals.
One thing I will guarantee you is that it'll be one heck of an atmosphere at Ellen Road. It'll be a full house, and the fans may, as Dan has alluded to there, play their part as well. So Leeds is the tip for Dan in the first of those Championship playoff semi-finals. Southampton against West Brom at St Mary's on Friday. Again, another goalless draw in the first leg. Dan, what did you make of that first game, and did you take any pointers from it?
I think it was a little bit more. It was another pretty dull affair, to be honest. But there was a few more chances created. I thought West Brom probably had the clearer of the chances that were created. I think part of what fed into them games as well, apart from the tension and both sides in both matches not wanting to lose, that you've got to remember that how hot it was as well on Sunday. So to try and sort of get a press on them, play at a tempo, wasn't easy. West Brom would have wanted to go into that game and get a press on and force Southampton to lose the ball as they do sometimes in dodgy areas. Achieved it a few times, but perhaps not as much as they would have wanted to. This one, I fancied West Brom. I thought they were overpriced at the start of the time. I'm going to stick to my guns this time. I think West Brom, just to win on the night at 15-4 to qualify, I think is probably the way to go. About 2-1 to qualify from the tie. I think they still have a good chance away from home. They look to press again at the right moments. Southampton this season, they kind of had this fits into 3 parts. They had a dodgy start where they lost 4 of the first 8 games. That 22-game unbeaten run where they looked amazing, and everybody thought they're going to storm to sort of a top 2 finish. And then after that, they kind of lost their way a bit again, and they lost 7. They've lost 7 of their 11 league defeats for the season came in the last 16 games. So that would be a worry for me with Southampton, that they've kind of lost their rhythm, if you like, going into such an important stage of the season. West Brom, as I've said before, very well coached side by Carlos Corberán. Maybe not got the individual quality of some of the other sides in the playoffs, but I like Mikey Johnson alone from Chelsea. He can produce a bit of magic for them when the need arises. So I think it'll be a very tight game. But West Brom in the league, that was a tight game. They lost their 2-1, but they did have the best of the shot count in the league game there. Won the shot count 14-10. Maybe they'll be more fortunate this time. Take West Brom to go through.
Okay, West Brom to qualify around about 15-4. So Dan is tipping up Leeds against West Brom in the final of the Championship playoff. You've got the final, of course, this weekend of both the League One and League Two playoffs. Let's start with League One then, Dan, because Bolton come up against Oxford at Wembley. Bolton will go in undoubtedly as the favourites, having just missed out on automatic promotion. But you've been quite big on Oxford since the semi-finals. They certainly did you proud in the semi-final, and they've now got a chance of getting into the Championship.
Yes. Well, I'm going to stick to my guns on this one as well. I fancied Oxford at the start of the playoffs at 4-1. Thought it was overpriced. I thought it was going to be a tight tie against Peterborough. That's the way it turned out. But they were organised, disciplined, came under a lot of pressure in the second half of that second leg. But that's going to happen when you're in front in the tie away from home. Weathered it pretty well, got the job done. Kept Peterborough, who were probably one of the, if not the best attacking side in League One, kept them down to 1 goal over 2 legs, which is good preparation, if you like, going into a game against Bolton, who are another kind of expansive side. But I think Oxford, funny that their worst performance, probably one of their worst performances of the season, was when they lost 5-0 away to Bolton in March in the league game. And since then, they've not looked back really. They had 1 defeat in 10 games following on from that, including the playoff matches. The manager, Des Buckingham, he's kind of had a bit of a change of system since. He's kind of played with two number 10s, Rodriguez and Tyler Goodwin have played in number 10 position, so quite an attacking formation, but seems to have suited them. And they've been, as I said, on this really good run. Bolton, I think they'd be disappointed not to get into the top 2. They were kind of pushing for it for a lot of the season, drew a lot of games towards the end of the season. I think they drew 3 of the last 4 matches and missed out. I wasn't entirely convinced by them in the playoff semi-final as well. Barnsley went into that game on a poor run of form, had sacked their manager just before the playoffs as well, Barnsley, and yet they gave them a right good game, didn't they, in the second leg? Won the second leg 3-2, and Bolton were kind of hanging on towards the end. So that will worry me a little bit. I do think Bolton are a very good side, and they'll enjoy Wembley. They're a good passing side, but Oxford are a good passing side as well. So I expect a close, should be a good watch as well, a close game. But Oxford, for me, at the prices, I'd say the value. My tip for the game, I'd say Oxford will at least take it to extra time. So Oxford will draw double chance at a shade of odds against. Shade of odds on.
Yeah, around about 10 to 11 for that. I think a lot of expectation on Bolton as well, which they have to deal with in front of that big crowd at Wembley. Possibly not so much of a bigger crowd for the League Two playoff final. They're not necessarily the biggest supporters of clubs Crewe and Crawley, but hats off to both of them for how they did in the semi-finals. I mean, Crawley absolutely romped past the MK Dons, and Crewe, having been beaten at home by Doncaster, turned things around in the second leg to win on penalties. As I say, impressive from both of them. Dan, which way do you think the final will go?
Yeah, I was more impressed with Crawley. I'm going to go with them to win the final. 11-10 to win in the 90 minutes. I think that's reasonable considering looking at how the two teams have played in the playoffs and their kind of their form over the course of the season. Crewe did a lot of their good work earlier in the season, picked up a lot of injuries towards the end of the season. Looked like they were going to make push for the top 3 for a while. Crewe for automatic promotion ended up kind of needed a result. I think going to Colchester on the last day of the season just to make sure their playoff place. Crewe. Some of them injured players have been coming back, so that's something that you got to bear in mind. Connor Thomas, Chris Long, Ed Turns, they all appeared in that second leg that you mentioned. Their way to Doncaster, they won 2-0, but it was still a bit of a smash and grab. I mean, I watched the game, and then you look back at the stats as well. They've won the game 2-0. Shot count was 15-8 in Doncaster's favour. Got 2 goals in the first 16 minutes. So it was almost a bit of a shock start, really. Yeah. Really rocks Doncaster in that part of the game. I'm looking at that performance, and I look at as you mentioned, Warren, the Crawley's performance. I watched both games against MK Dons. They were absolutely superb, both games. It wasn't like a fortunate 8-1 if you can get that, but they were brilliant in the first leg. Played good football in real intensity. What impressed me is the second leg. They didn't sit back at all. They actually went and pressed them right from the start, and that's how they scored the first goal. Right in the first couple of minutes, won the ball high up, scored, went on from there, kept pressing and playing the football, and romped to a 5-1 win. They have got Scott Lindsay, the manager there. He's one of the best managers in the lower leagues. He's recruited absolutely fantastically. Got a really strong spine. Corey Adai, I'd say, is the best keeper in League Two. You look through the defence, Lawrence Maguire, Dion Conroy at the back there, Liam Kelly in midfield, who recruited from he got relegated with Rochdale last season. Jay Williams in midfielder, he got him from Brackley Town. And Danilo Orsi is the most amazing signing. Got 2 goals at Grimsby last season, 19 goals this season for Crawley. Apparently, the manager looked at him. He's noticed that he had a really high XG, and he's decided, taught him how to finish. And Bob's your uncle. He's absolutely flying. So for me, Crewe, as I said, done great to get through, to get back, and then the form they were in, and to not such an informed team like Doncaster out, but. I do think they rode their luck in that game. Crawley, another tough game for them, and Crawley I would take to get the job done.
So that's Dan's thoughts then on what will happen in the playoffs over the next few days. Dan, if you just remind us of your tips again for those 4 matches.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Leeds and over 2.5 goals at odds against in the game against Norwich. West Brom to qualify from their tie against Southampton. Oxford or draw, double chance. So that's just on the 90 minutes in the game against Bolton. And the League Two playoff final, Crawley to beat Crewe on the 90 minutes.
Just before you let you go for the season, Dan, it's been an incredible EFL campaign. I mean, when you look at the likes of Ipswich and Wrexham getting promotion after back-to-back promotions, it's been a real season to remember.
Yeah, fantastic season. I think Ipswich's achievement, is the one for me. I mean, it's a fairly big gap, as I've said before, between League One and the Championship. And you've seen with, Plymouth and Sheffield Wednesday sort of, struggling and just about managing to stay up, to actually kick on again. And they haven't spent fortunes as well, Ipswich, to kick on again and win automatic promotion. Unbelievable achievement from them.
Dan, thanks for today, and thanks for all of the hard work over the season.
You're welcome, Warren.
Well, as promised now, Mark's going to run us through his suggestions for the upcoming end-of-season finals. And we'll start off, Mark, with what looks like an absolutely intriguing Europa League final. Arguably, you could say two teams in better form than those in the Champions League final, as Atalanta take on Bayer Leverkusen in Dublin. Atalanta around about 2-1 to lift the trophy. Bayer Leverkusen still, of course, looking for that unbeaten season, 2-5. What are you thinking here?
I'm going to go for Atalanta or draw, double chance. So for them to take it to at least extra time. I mean, we've got a big anti-post position here. Tipped Atalanta when they were 25-1 ahead of the knockout stages. And I'm not sort of doing it for sentimental reasons. I think they are capable. Look how they played against Liverpool. They're a very capable side. They lost the Coppa Italia final to Juventus on Wednesday. I think Juventus just have this mental block and mental hold over kind of smaller teams, particularly in Italy, and they got the early goal and sort of shut Atalanta out. I don't think Leverkusen can play like that. So I think it'd be a really good game. If anyone's got a ticket for the final in Dublin, they should enjoy it. We know that Leverkusen have been the story of Europe sort of this season, haven't lost a game in any competition. So opposing them doesn't come easily, but they're not a team that kind of wins as easily as kind of you would imagine for a team that could go invincible. So many late goals, quite a few draws as well. So I just hope that Atalanta can do themselves justice, turn up and take the game to at least extra time, and hopefully they land Betts Club followers with a juicy winner.
So from Dublin, we move to London because the FA Cup final takes place on May the 25th. It is another Manchester derby. City came out on top last time out. Can United turn the tables to win the trophy? City are 1-7, Manchester United 9-2. Can we make a case for an upset here, Mark, or is it going to be same again?
I was at the final last season. I was in the prawn sandwich bit. I was only a few rows up from Prince William, and Fergie was there, Sir Alex Ferguson, or I should add.
Rather than Sarah Ferguson.
Yeah, exactly. And I really enjoyed that game, and I thought that United put up a decent effort. I think they can do the same again, but I'm going to go for Man City to win and under 3.5 goals. So since 1995, only 4 FA Cup finals have had 4 or more goals. And I know that this final is sort of slightly different to most of those, in that you've got a team in City that are just way better than even Manchester United. And, they are capable of running amok. But it was only 2-1 last season. And I can see United doing sort of what Tottenham tried to do to City on Tuesday, play a boxing midfield, maybe nobody up front, and United did that, didn't they, against Newcastle on Wednesday, when it was like McTominay and Bruno Fernandes. Make it really narrow, and as I alluded to last week, and Wayne Rooney might have been listening because he mentioned it on Super Sunday. How many of those United players are injured, and how many of them are kind of potentially available for when the games get big? Yeah. We've seen a few of them return, haven't we? Now, so I think the United team will be stronger. For being able to field some of those players that have been injured. City ultimately too good, but maybe not an absolute blowout.
4 days after the FA Cup final, it'll be the Europa Conference League final on May 29th. Olympiacos against Fiorentina. Hats off to anybody who picked this final at the start of the tournament, because it would have been very difficult. Olympiacos 11-10 to lift the trophy. Fiorentina around 4-6. I have to say I was impressed with Olympiacos against Aston Villa, Mark.
I'm going to go for them to lift the trophy. I mean, it would have been very difficult to pick Olympiacos one because they weren't in it at the start. They dropped in from the Europa League, which again I think shows their kind of standard. And they'll probably be disappointed that they were in a hard enough group with West Ham and Freiburg. So maybe that was kind of did for them. But I've seen them beat Villa, and it was 6-2 on aggregate. They got Podence, Ibora, El Khabi was deadly in that game. I mean, that was an impressive victory against Villa. I know Villa had a few injuries. Even before that, Fenerbahce, they knocked them out. And, they had the sort of classic Turkish old stagers. They had Tadic, Bonucci, Batshuayi, Dzeko all playing for them. So they've done very well to reach the final. I think Fiorentina have had a nice path through, I would say, to this stage. And yeah, I don't see anything between them really. So I'm going to go for an upset.
Yeah, I think they're a really good price, Olympiacos, to end what's been a fantastic run for them. The Champions League final, of course, takes centre stage on June the 1st as we return to Wembley for the clash between Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund. The majority of people will be edging towards Real Madrid with I suppose, their latest Galacticos at the moment, with the likes of Vinicius Junior and Jude Bellingham. 3-10, the Spanish Giants to lift the trophy. Dortmund as big as 5-2. What's your suggestion here, Mark?
Yeah, I've put up a fair few sort of outsiders, I think, today. Not on this occasion. I'm going to go for Real Madrid at 8-13 to win in 90 minutes. Dortmund done brilliantly to get to the final, but they're 5th in the Bundesliga. And I think if you actually have a look at it, look at their knockout run. PSV Eindhoven, not very good in comparison to Real Madrid. Atletico, way off Real Madrid in terms of La Liga. PSG, in big games. I don't know how you can fancy them. They were in the group of death, Borussia Dortmund, weren't they, at the start? But again, Milan not having as good a season as what many predicted. Newcastle, what they 7th in the Premier League at the moment. So potentially that sort of group of death wasn't kind of the group of death that we thought of it. Real Madrid comfortably dispatched of a Leipzig team that's ahead of Dortmund in the Bundesliga. They had to battle their way past, Man City, of course. I thought over the 2 legs they were better than Bayern Munich. I know the goals came late, but I thought they deserved to win. Some of their players are coming back from injury. I just think they've got too much quality in that final third, and couldn't put anyone, mate. If you don't fancy the 8-13, maybe the -1, because if they get in front and Dortmund have to push on, like on the counter attack off the bench, and then that's key. Look at the quality that Madrid have got off the bench. Like Kroos kind of passes you to Zef for 65 minutes, and then they bring on Luka Modric to kind of just hammer home that final nail. So yeah, I'm pretty strong actually on Real Madrid. I thought they'd be shorter than what they are to win the Champions League.
Well, that's Mark's thoughts then on the end of season finals. And one last tip in terms of this weekend's action. Mark, where's your nap?
I'm going to go for Chelsea to win and over 2.5 goals. Flying right now, the Blues. Earlier on in the season, we referenced it a lot of times. Pochettino has mentioned it as well. Like their XG was fine. They just weren't converting the chances. They are converting them now. Bournemouth have lost all of their games away to the top 5 this season, and all of those had over 2.5 goals. Chelsea in 6th spot at the moment can complete that sort of big 6 in terms of the league table, in terms of Bournemouth losing, but they're also being at least 3 goals.
So Mark's tip then is nap for the weekend, Chelsea to win and over 2.5 goals against Bournemouth. And that just about wraps up then Bets Club for today and, of course, for the season. And, well, Mark, it's been another season to remember. Any sort of highlights or any things that have stood out for you over the last few months?
Oh, it's got to be. It's got to be that Son missed. I know I'm going to go for a recency bias, but that Son miss on Tuesday night, I just my feelings. I'm not going to even
all
explain.
over the place.
They weren't all over the place, Warren. I wanted him to miss, and it felt like it took 5 minutes for him to run through and miss that opportunity. The stadium went absolutely silent as he ran through. So I think what I would say is that, like the goals per game through the roof in the Premier League this season. I mean, so many games have just been absolutely chaotic. And, I might not like VAR, but I love the game. And, it's been a good season.
And you just mentioned VAR. I just wanted to mention quickly, of course, that they are going to vote about potentially getting rid of it for next season. What's your thoughts on that?
I would vote to get rid personally and just accept the referee's decision. I don't think the clubs will go for that. Maybe they should have done something where automated offsides and we get rid of everything else. But that joy of celebrating a goal and it being taken away from you is one of the worst feelings, I think, as a football fan, particularly when you're in the stadium and like you might not even have seen that there's something that they're checking. In terms of lows of the season, I think that 4-1 defeat for Spurs at home to Chelsea, when it felt like was celebrating a goal every 5 minutes, and they kept on getting chalked off, was excruciating.
I think from my perspective, hats off to Wolves for a brilliantly worded statement and their attempts to try and change, like you say, the frustration of the fans, Mark, more than anything, with VAR as things stand. It has been a cracking season. Hopefully it'll be a cracking end to the campaign with a weekend to remember as well. Don't forget, of course, if you've enjoyed Bets Club, to like, subscribe and comment. And obviously as well, there's plenty of other sport going on across the weekend. In particular, there's the second major of the golf year, the US PGA Championship at Valhalla, and you can join Steve Palmer and Jack Reed for a live watch along of the US PGA Golf on the Racing Post YouTube channel on Sunday from 7:30 p.m. Hopefully you can join the guys for that. It's always plenty of fun, and of course Steve's tips are regularly successful as well when it comes to the big ones, so please join Jack and Steve for that if you can. But thanks also for being part of Bets Club for this season, and of course enjoy your football and remember to gamble responsibly.